Hello, good morning. If you all could sit down, grab your coffee, take a seat. Good morning, everyone. This is the first of many, and at some point for some of you it may be too many, meetings in which we're going to share with you the ideas and dreams for St. John's future. There is a committee that was formed, and John Stewart will give you the details in a minute. A committee that was formed called the Capital Needs Discernment Committee. And some of the members are sitting up here. It's John Astori and John Ross as co-chairs. And current members are Karen Berry, Ann Dursey, Liz Everhart, Brad Kennedy, John Stewart, Aaron Shepard, and myself. And this committee was formed last summer, and it's to look at the St. John's future. Pretty soon I'll be able to sit down and won't have to double duty. So what we're going to cover today, thank you. What we're going to cover today is why consider a capital campaign at all? We have a 150th anniversary coming up, and why are we considering a capital campaign? And why do churches consider capital campaigns anyway? We want to review the committee's charter. We did some listening sessions in the summer and fall, and we want to share with you what we heard. We want to share our next steps in gathering more information, and we want to share how we will report back to the vestry and to the parish.
Thanks, Suzanne. And if we could only figure out how to do a PowerPoint outside, we would have gone to the Tower Lawn on such a nice day. Thank you for being with us today. And we missed John Ross and John Astori, neither of whom could be with us today, because they have been incredible leaders of this process and have worked a lot on this. The vestry started this process with a series of discussions in 2018, and we looked at the question of what demands there were going to be for our future as we came up to the 150th anniversary. And everyone knows that the kitchen needs work, and the parish hall is not big enough for everything, and the West Avenue lobby is not big enough for people to gather easily, and the church school situation is not ideal. But beyond those, the vestry wanted to think more long-term and strategically. And so we embarked on this process. And in fact, we took note of the fact that our vision process really set us on a path that was very exciting and vibrant. And we learned that there were certain things that, again, the limitations of our facilities prevented us from being able to do. But as we expect to continue that outgrowth, that growth and outreach into the community, we wanted to think about our facilities and what we needed from them in the future. And so, and I would also say that beyond this path we're on of continuing exciting activity and reaching into the community, we, like all other Episcopal churches and other churches, face this fundamental challenge as we go forward, that we believe, and this is part of the diocesan strategic planning process, is best addressed through engaging with the community. And so our sort of ideas, which are many, and you'll see a number of them, have to do with thinking about St. John's as a beacon to the community over the next decades, and as we pass through our 150th anniversary. We want to think big about what it is that we can become and how we can use our facilities to do that. So next slide. The committee that we created last June has this charter. We want to take a look, we want to ascertain what kinds of capital projects might be possible to help strengthen our foundation, allow the parish to thrive, adapt, and grow in the future, and to further St. John's mission and vision statements. That was along the lines of what I said, and that's what the vestry gave to this committee as its charter. Now, and again, this is the committee's job, is to ascertain what kinds of projects would allow us to thrive in the future in this way, consistent with our mission and vision. The committee has met every 2 weeks since June. We've done an incredible amount of work. We have reached out to ministry leaders with a formal sort of set of questions, which you'll see on the next slide. We've had these listening sessions. We've had participation by members of the various ministries, including the property committee and the like. We've had, our meetings are open, and parishioners have actually, in my experience on the vestry, the open vestry meetings are never attended by people from the parish, but parishioners came to our meetings and gave us the most useful and wonderful input, and that continues to be the case. We then formed subcommittees on the committee to more deeply investigate a number of things that had happened. And the committees did outside research, gathered data from a lot of different sources to look at questions of, commercial rentals and parking alternatives and multiple other things like that. And we brought all that back together. And we also, by the way, have talked with experts in community service in Montgomery County, experts who have engaged with churches in expanding their community outreach and modifying their facilities to help them do that. And then we prepared a report, an interim report to the vestry, which was received in November of last year. And the vestry then sent us back to continue to develop more information and try to develop a timeline and to focus more on this. The charter also requires the committee to provide a final report to the vestry this spring, which will give the vestry then some alternatives to consider. So the committee is not deciding things. The committee is doing an incredible job of gathering information and analyzing and investigating for the purpose of allowing the vestry to make decisions about whether and how and why to move forward. But one of the most important things is that the vestry asks us to do as well is to get input from the parish. And so we're hoping that you'll provide us some input today, and we'll be back for more input as this process goes forward.
All right, now we want to go through the questions we asked in the fall. But first of all, this is audience participation time. So please raise your hand if you've ever been at a church that's gone through a capital campaign. All right, keep your hands up if it was this St. John's. All right, thank you. And then this is just, I'm curious, raise your hands again if you participated, if you're in one of the groups that we asked questions of in the fall. Okay, good. All right, well, we're going to run through the questions we asked, and this is not the end of our asking of what people think, but we had to start somewhere. So we started with the lay leadership and asking a set of questions. We did not ask questions related to the nave space because the last capital campaign focused primarily on the nave space. That doesn't mean that there aren't things needed to improve worship in that space, but we're trying to pull down the big picture. So we did not put that in the big picture of our questions. So in case the print's too small, I'm going to run through this quickly. The first question related to changes in our facilities that support your committee, because we were talking to lay leaders, vision and mission. Then we asked questions about how to make St. John's a more welcoming and inclusive space. Can we save Q&A for the end? That's okay, if you don't mind. We do have a big Q&A, which is the other audience participation piece at the end. Then we focused about design changes to the parish hall, West Avenue lobby area, kitchen, and playground entrance that a layout and design if people were interested in, because we hear a lot of complaints about this space. We asked questions about the education wing changes. If the school were to ever leave, what would we do with that space. And we focused on, we focused this a little bit, and we'll get into it in a minute. A center focused on a single use, a single issue, creating an additional auditorium type space, or creating a hub for nonprofit offices and meeting space that supports issues that St. John's cares about. And then it was other missional uses of the repurposed education wing. All right, I'm going to go through now what we heard, and I'm going to ask my fellow committee members to mention each of these. So let me start with the improved hospitality space, the parish hall and kitchen, Brad. And Liz.
We heard lots of comments about the need to improve our hospitality space, but the two comments we heard the most were, we need a larger parish hall space that can accommodate more of the parish at one time, and that we need more small meeting spaces. There are very few places, as a West Avenue lobby currently is, and our other common spaces, for people to get into small groups to meet informally, or for small groups during the week to meet more formally. And so what we heard is a need for large meeting spaces, more small meeting spaces, and maybe some sort of flexibility with those, that we could subdivide a parish hall to break it into smaller meeting rooms, or section off smaller rooms for people to meet during the week, to make it more accessible to other groups.
And I will focus a little on the kitchen. As anybody here who has anything to do with the kitchen knows, the kitchen needs some work. And there were a lot of, that was sort of a big thing I heard from just about everyone. It would be really nice to have, what I heard was, be really nice to have a commercial kitchen, a true commercial kitchen. That would just be nice for us, but it would also be nice in terms of being able to potentially rent out the space on occasion to people who might want to use it, and also to have community events. There may be parishioners here or people in the community who would like to offer classes for sort of maybe ideas on better nutrition, or teaching cooking classes to kids, or any variety of community type of events that could be held in a really nice commercial kitchen. So a lot about that, and then just generally just a better kitchen. So that's it from us.
Sunday school, Erin?
So in talking about the Sunday school facilities, as we talk, John mentioned in terms of thinking through the future of St. John's and ensuring the strength of the church school program for the young families in the parish, we took a look at sort of the existing and what a future state might look like, future needs would be for the Sunday school community. For those who may not be as familiar with the current program, we have three classrooms upstairs and the pilgrimage room upstairs on the second floor. We have 4 classrooms in use in the basement. We have three grades that are combined right now. Preschool through kindergarten are together, first and second are together, and fifth and sixth are together. So as we looked at sort of how many classrooms are we thinking, somewhere between the 8 and 10 range to allow for growth will continue to be the need as to the actual space. And when we talked to both parents of young children in the parish and also the church school teachers, one of the big things that we hear time and time again from the church school teachers, I'm one of those, my husband is graciously teaching for me this morning, is the need or the desire to think about having a more permanent space, or ways in which you might be able to carry projects over from week to week. Some of the ways in which we might be able to think about being less of visitors in our own space, or ways and enhancements that we may be able to make for that. And the other piece is there has been a bit of a distributed nature of the courses of the classrooms currently. We'll take our children, and there isn't always as much of a gathering place for the parents of young families. Some of the same themes that Brad was just touching on. Hines Hall, however, as we've started the Sundays of Service this year, it's been a great contribution to sort of having a locus for those young families to be talking with one another, gathering with during church school. So those were sort of the ongoing needs that we identified. There was discussion about the basement space alone, potentially having sufficient capacity to house that if you were to downsize some of the classrooms. But in terms of the overall space needs, it really is that 8 to 10 classrooms, and then thinking about continued ways in which you could have full group, full community activities as well.
So the next bullet is considering potential opportunities in the education wing. And here we really, again, we're looking at what was possible, because the education wing is such a significant part of our facilities, and we wanted to think through what it would look like if it were different. And so we collected information and suggestions from people throughout the parish. They included the possibility of dedicating it to a particular social service function, like we could call it a justice center. We considered the possibility of leasing individual office spaces to public service or social service agencies. We've looked at the possibility of using it for daycare or elder care, or just a range of possibilities, all of which have pluses and minuses, and we're not anywhere close to recommending one or two or three of those particular ones. But basically, we're just looking at the question of what potential opportunities are there in the use of that space into the future. It comes, and we, the vestry, are going to have our budget work day on Saturday to adopt the final budget for 2020, and the revenue we obtain from the school is material to our budget. It's not something that we could simply do without a series of ways in which to address that difference. And so we're looking at the question, and we are looking at the question throughout the potential projects of whether and how we might be able to monetize some of them to offset the loss of the revenue and part of the costs of the changes. So, next slide, and that's you.
Sure. Oh, how's that? Great. So one thing we heard about too was the need for more small group meeting space. And right now, as probably all of you know, we have basically the lounge, the library, and the parish hall. And we're able to juggle those spaces among the groups that need them, but in order to grow, and if we want to offer more programs, it would definitely be helpful to have more spaces in which to meet, both for weekend meetings, weeknight meetings and Sunday meetings. If we wanted to offer more adult education, parent education classes, that type of thing, or even, I know, like, for example, Montgomery Hospice has grief groups. They'd love to use our space. So that's just something that we would love to be able to expand on and offer to both internal and external groups.
So I'm going to cover the miscellaneous categories, but parking isn't miscellaneous. It's a big issue, and it will impact anything and everything we do. But the vestry and the committee knows that we need to look at how to secure adequate parking. There has been a parking study done. That was done by another committee, but we still have it. And this committee looked into renting other parking lots in case this parking, let's not say in case, eventually it will. When that land is redeveloped, the parking will go away. So we are looking at renting adjacent lots nearby. We are looking at, there's always, can we buy anything nearby and make a parking lot out of it? We don't think there's enough space on our own land to put parking, and underground parking is extraordinarily expensive. So that's not, we don't think that's a financially feasible solution. And then there's the idea of encouraging more people to park, who can park in surrounding garages, to park there, and then we could do maybe a shuttle service if they're too far away. And then there are ideas of making all the parking spaces on Sunday in the back. I think there are 7 of them for seniors or handicapped accessible spaces just for that Sunday. For those of you who don't know, the town restrictions are permit parking except on Sundays, and that's our challenge. Now, as for the other concerns we've heard, we have a long list. Property committee, I will swear, came up with a really good list. But a lot of them I'll boil down for you is one is better accessibility. We have some accessible entrances. They were put in 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and they don't meet current, they're not automatic. You're not a push, we need to make them more accessible, and design and technology has changed in the last 20 years. We have a heating plant needs of this building. We have, when this building was built in the 50s, just all of it was built in the 50s. The kitchen was built in the 50s. So that's why, that's why it's in great need of repair. But the whole building has just structural issues that need to be addressed at some point because of its age. And we have that list, and we will always collect on that list. John?
Okay, and let me add on parking, by the way, since I'm on the parking subcommittee with Suzanne, that we in general are continuing, apart from this process, to pursue alternative solutions to our parking issues, and none of them are completely adequate, but we're working on that because we see that as a potential problem as this property gets developed, and so we're looking at alternatives. And part of this could be working with the county as they build new parking a few blocks away and the like. So next steps for the committee, and I won't read these, I'll just characterize them, I think, which is that we're going to continue to refine the potential options, which are too many to home in on a recommendation at this point, continue to hear from the parish about additional ideas or thoughts about the ones we've presented, we've identified. And then we're going to dig deeper and get more cost information and more detailed information about them. This is so that we can ultimately present information and recommendations to the vestry in the next couple of months and to the parish, and we're going to be having more forums as well to do that. But so this is all a process, and we've made a substantial amount of progress, I think, given all the work that's been done by every member of the committee thus far and the input that we've received from you all. But there's more to be done. And so the last slide is simply the specific next thing that's going to happen is after we continue to do what the vestry has told us to do in terms of deeper dives on the alternatives that we've identified and more information and some consultation with additional experts, we're going to report back to them and make recommendations in the next couple of months. But what happens next is that this is not a capital campaign committee at all. Any decision about whether to embark on a capital campaign will be done by the vestry, and the vestry will not do that until after it performs a feasibility study, which is essentially a survey and taking a look at all the costs. And from our perspective, one of the things we've heard and discussed the committee is the advisability of proceeding in phases, of potentially having a master plan for this beacon in the community idea about what St. John's can be with the ideal version of our property here, but then to make sure that they're manageable pieces that we can and that are prioritized as we go through this process. So that's what happens next, and then the next slide is questions and answers. You should ask your question because you didn't get to. Thanks.
I thought one of the first things you said you were going to address is sort of what are the risks of not having a capital campaign? Was I right about that? Or sort of the general impetus and what the consequences would be, sort of what's weighing the decision?
Yeah, that, I neglected to explain that further. It was up on the slide. But this comes essentially from what we see as an existential challenge to churches. As we age and are reduced in our membership, and this is true for all mainline churches, we need to invigorate ourselves and to engage with the community. This is part of what the diocesan strategic planning process has identified. And so our church and our programs, I again say, we've embarked on this path, and it's a wonderful thing to see. All of the energy and volunteer efforts that have been engaged in by this parish are wonderful, but we want to continue that, and we want to integrate that with potential capital projects. That's the thought of it.
John, generally, when a church does a capital campaign, they hire a consultant to help them forecast what they think that they can raise within the capital campaign, so that you have to marry what you think you can raise with your ideas, which should be expansive as much as we can. But where along this process, or have you considered hiring an outside consultant to help us really grasp with what we think we can raise?
Yeah, that's exactly the plan. We have a proposal from the consultant that we used for sort of brainstorming in 2018 to do this, what they call a feasibility study. We didn't want to, first the vestry has to consider whether to do that given the recommendations of this committee and what they perceive as the needs for these kinds of capital projects. But I think that at least the feasibility stage is likely to happen. But that's going to happen a couple of months from now, the decision of the vestry and the launching of a feasibility study.
So is there money in the 2020 budget to hire this consultant?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for this presentation. I'm really happy to hear about all the different areas that you guys have looked at. It sounds like a ton of work, so thanks to all of you. I have a question about our outdoor space. I was surprised not to see our green space listed kind of on our assets and our thought process of what we want to do about the church, because it's a treasure in Bethesda to have the tower lawn and even the memorial garden, the open green space, as more and more of Bethesda gets paved and built up. And one of the comments I made in the survey you all sent out is that it could even be thought of as more of a community space and really used as kind of a treasure for the whole community. So I would love to see the green space on the list of areas that you're thinking about.
All right, so this is our parking lot. For those of you who've done these kind of meetings before, this is our parking lot for additional comments. I'm going to be writing on this.
But we agree.
But we got to get one from the other side.
It's about the,
Well, okay.
We did discuss that somewhat during our meetings, and it came up in comments from other people that our green space is not, it could be better utilized than it is, either for church functions or as a community space. So that is something that we're aware of, and I think will be part of the discussion as we continue on. Yeah.
So I'd like to thank everyone who's been meeting so frequently and all the work that you've done. I appreciate that as a member of the parish for so many years. And I'm a supporter of growth for the parish and becoming what your ideal vision is. I also just want to raise a central question of what is our definition of church? Is it a building or is it a community? And I've been, as we all know, I think many know, I've been active with outreach for many years and other organizations in the parish, and I just want to make sure our money is spent so that we can mainly be a community church and not a building that looks terrific. And we have a nice changes in the West Avenue lobby and so forth, but I just wanted to raise that question as we proceed to make sure what our outreach, our money and our time and efforts are spent.
We agree with you completely. And any changes to the building that we would consider would be designed to improve our community and our ability to thrive as a community. Yes, I agree.
I knew if I let Carolyn go first, I could just be an amen to what she said. I've been involved in many ways in different campaigns, and we've done a lot for the church building itself. And I think the list that you've come up with are the follow-up important things that we can do within the building. So I don't want the next comment to detract from the fact that I think your target is solid. But I too feel like we are a church, not a corporation, not trying to serve other purposes. Our purpose is to serve our faith. And a large part of that faith is helping those who are suffering. And I was and am involved with a nonprofit that helps provide housing in the district for very poor people. One of the things that enabled us to fix up one of our buildings and renovate it, provide housing, very nice housing for 13 families, Partners Arms too, was a grant from the local Catholic Church, which had run a capital campaign and set aside 10% of the proceeds of that for a mission to be determined. I was enthralled with them, and I've stayed in contact with the person who led it at the church, and it means so much for the community. For St. John's, here's an opportunity to do something. Doesn't have to be that, but something where we could create a mission which is ours, we can claim as our own, and help those. There's so many people suffering. I don't really care at this point which group we help. There are more than we can help. But become identified with that program and think about what the Congolese effort did. It energized this parish. It involved people. It created reward for doing good. Reward for doing good is a good thing to have, and it builds community within the church. It attracts others, and you can do more. So with some apologies, because it doesn't fit on your agenda, I just think that some part of the focus, especially these days, should be directed to St. John's doing something special for the community that we not only will fund, but provide the leadership for.
Sure.
So Earl, we're already focused on the fact that if there's a capital campaign, it needs to have an outreach focus and as a piece of it. I think we talked about on each of the previous capital campaigns, you were on one with me, or you led one and I was sitting in a chair where you said it's important that 10% of it go for an outreach. And so that is on our list. It is not shown up as the building needs, which is what we're discussing here, but definitely we are talking among ourselves and we hear you about that.
That's what I wanted to say, was that it's not up there, but it's behind everything that we're considering. We're not going to change the building for the building's sake or to have a nicer place for us to be in. Our objective is to do exactly what you're talking about, to engage with the community and provide services that are needed.
One of the things, and what I will stress in the potential repurposing of the educational wing was that very question of, is it a single use? Is it multiple uses? Is it access for multiple outreach things? Because one of the strengths of the parish is how many different outreach activities we have. So we thought through, well, can we choose one? Do we want to choose multiple? Do we choose multiple within a thematic thread? Those are the very conversations to be able to really be leaning in. Absolutely.
So I'll make a quick comment here. I was working very closely with another Bethesda church who was doing something very similar to this, and they created a separate nonprofit entity for which the church was really the primary stakeholder, but they also had board members from the community, and I was one of those board members. A couple of thoughts. we went through the capital campaign feasibility study. We also worked very closely with the chamber, with the county council, with our state legislators. We got some grants from both the county and the state because we were going to be doing a lot of services to the community, and they were very eager for us to become sort of this nonprofit center. So I know there's energy and enthusiasm around this idea. So
we've been talking just about that with the county, and yeah. Go ahead.
And I'd add too, part of the, in addition to wanting all of this feedback, those of you who have those types of connections and experiences, that's absolutely part of what we want to make sure that we're capturing and gathering as well.
John, I thought your reference to the materialness, the material nature of the to the operating budget of the 1S contract was a very Episcopalian way of talking about a lot of money, and so my question is it the role of this committee and the consultant, or is it the vestry in combination with finance? How do we look at the actual quantitative impact of that, and whether we can really, so rather than just saying we could monetize some of the things that we're doing with the community, which is a great intention, but as a practical matter, it really would affect the success, I think, of both the campaign and the operating budget going forward.
I agree, and part of the charter was actually to address the question of the loss of revenue from OFS if we were to repurpose that. And all that we as the committee have been able to do is actual research, market research, to see the likely rentals we could get from social service agencies, to look at sort of temporary office, and so look at the ways in which a replacement could possibly do that. But I got to say, from the vestry perspective, our OFS revenue makes us, I think, the second or third parish in the diocese out of 41 in terms of external revenues. And at the same time, our dollars pledged per pledger are below average for the diocese. So one aspect, and it seems crazy to think about given how we still haven't met our pledge goal here, but that's at least one possibility. I don't think that's the answer. I don't think everyone in the parish should just give more money to replace that. This is a very serious issue that we're going to have to address. I agree, and we don't have the answer yet.
Hi, my name is Karen, and I assume that this is in the background of every one of the possible things we would do, is making sure that whatever we do, it does improve accessibility to the spaces. I mean, the kitchen would be a great case in point, and I'm not talking just mobility accessibility, although that's a huge one, but I'm going to assume, like the other things, that's sort of like there in the background, I would hope.
It is, absolutely. It's part of our report. And we also have gotten feedback from parishioners about the accessibility of the sanctuary, the nave space, and difficulties people have, which is just unacceptable for us to have parishioners who can't come to our services.
As part of the looking at the parking, have you all determined what the value of the property next door is yet, or have you thought about that?
We have sort of pegged it based on prior information, but it's very loosey-goosey, but it's the value of the property. And your suggestion, John, that we consider a capital campaign to buy the property, make it missional space, and solve our parking problem, was seriously discussed by the committee as well. Our ultimate conclusion was that given the development rush in Bethesda, the value of the property is likely higher than it was the last time we considered this, and is likely too high to make that a practical objective. But we wouldn't rule it off the table at this point, but we think it's probably not feasible to do that.
I may be saying the same, my name is Jan, I may be saying the same thing, but is there any feasibility when the development happens here to have some parking space in the bottom part?
Yeah, and this, you know, this is a process that we've worked through before and got stopped and has changed now, and so, but we want and expect support from the county to help us solve our parking problem, but we don't know if that's going to happen, and that could cost a lot of money.
All right, so let me add a piece about what happens when the developer next door goes to redevelop. They need to have a site plan. That site plan needs to have approval. We are the loudest voice on what we like or don't like on their site plan. We can't make them give us parking. We might be able to negotiate it in exchange for approval. We also have I think it's a 25-foot setback along the Memorial Garden that they have to give us a setback there. So it'll be a negotiation. How far we can get, we don't know until we see their site plan and get into those conversations. But we'll push for as much as we can.
What is being developed next door? Maybe you said that earlier in the meeting. Do we know what's going in there?
No. They've talked about luxury apartments. They've talked about an office building. They have to put a greenway setback in the back. We know that from the plan. But they're not, typically they don't say anything until they file their plan.
Do you know the balance on our loan that we currently have from the last capital campaign or Oregon thing?
I think it's 250,000 roughly, right? And one of the things that parishioners have said is that paying that off has got to be the first use of any new capital campaign funds.
I think this issue of what's left from the last capital campaign highlights the importance of thinking about this as a phased process, right? Where you don't embark on something very ambitious, where the funding has not been clearly thought through. And I mean, what's nice about what you're doing is really the way in which you are sort of looking at different aspects of it and trying to prioritize those. The experience of the last capital campaign where we were left with some debt because of the upfront ambition of it is something we need to take into account. I mean, I think in the last campaign it was about the nave. All the pieces had to fit together, and so there wasn't the kind of flexibility that you have here, and you seem to be building into the process. And I think that's something that's very good to think about. What's most important, what we can afford, and think about it perhaps over a longer timeline. Thank you.
Right, and just to follow up, our remaining debt on the prior capital campaign was originally to a bank, and then we essentially took over the debt ourselves, and so the repayment is into our own endowment funds, but we are committed to repay that to the endowment funds. We don't have a loan to a bank at this point.
Small group meeting place. Can't the Sunday school rooms be used for that purpose?
That's a great idea. So how much do you charge for your architectural services?
A lot of us might have to find out where they are, but yes.
Right. No, we're considering the need to reconfigure the downstairs space to provide very wonderful Sunday school facilities. It's not there now, but that's a great idea. As long as you don't play with any of the art projects.
I think just sort of building on that, I think the challenge is to think about how spaces can be flexible that allow some, like Aaron said, like ability to store things and, have ongoing work, but doesn't have spaces that sit empty all but 1 hour a week. I mean, that's not good stewardship of our resources in an area where there's such a demand for space either, to have rooms that we only use between 10 and 11 on Sunday mornings.
We think that's right, although the sharing of space with OFS creates problems of its own. So, and we're actually, we were surprised to hear an expert in this area say we have a lot of space in our kitchen, because it doesn't feel like that. But and we do have a lot of space in our church facilities in general. So. Okay. Well, thank you all for coming today, and thank you in advance for continuing to think about this and contacting anybody on the committee to let us know your additional thoughts, and we'll be back to you. Thanks.